Okay, so hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Default Global. This is where we connect with global first entrepreneurs, HR, and talent acquisition experts from all around the world. Our guest today is Ryan-Mae McAvoy, Director of People Operations at Blackthorn. Ryan-Mae, thanks for joining us today.
Of course, happy to be here.
Yeah, and it is awesome to have you here. So, your journey at Blackthorn is super interesting. So, maybe could you please briefly introduce yourself and maybe share the story of how you became a part of Blackthorn?
Yeah, so I have been in the people space for over 10 years. I have worked in kind of all of the sectors. I started at a ski area, I worked at a veterinary hospital, I did a stint as a consultant. And in summer of 2021, I had some amazing people in my network be like, hey, you just don't seem very happy where you're at. I connected with our amazing head of talent, Matt Roy, and he was like, hey, I've got this company. You seem like our energy. And even now, going almost into year 3, I'm like, this is still my job and these are my people, which is really refreshing. And so I kind of started at Blackthorn. I was an early hire. One of the things Blackthorn did that I suggest a lot of people do is they brought people team in early. We're a small team, but we're mighty. And I think it really helped us build where we are now. Since I joined, we have rolled out so many programs. Most notably that we're known for is our 4-day work week. That one has been kind of what people find us for.
Yeah, we're
In
gonna talk about
addition,
that. Yeah.
yeah, in addition to that, we have got a lot of add-on programs. We do an entertainment reimbursement. We have some student loan assistance. We work with various vendors that I know you've interviewed for such things as pay, benefits globally, just a lot of resources helping us be equal across the globe because it's really easy as a US company to default to all those. And we really try and make sure that we're doing everything we can. It's not a perfect science. It definitely is a struggle sometimes, but it's been such an amazing journey of for me personally as an HR person to learn this whole new resource and pool of talent that is out there.
And let's talk about the company itself. So Blackthorn is all about developing cool Salesforce products, like for event management, right? Payments, like you mentioned, texting, and stuff like that. So maybe can you give us a little sneak peek into what your company is all about? Like maybe what kind of
Yes.
businesses you typically work with, and some details, maybe.
I'm definitely the last person to be the most well versed on this, but we do have a bunch of apps in the Salesforce App Exchange. Our product is a Salesforce native product. We do a lot of higher ed for our payments. There's a lot of field service. I know they're working with messaging campaigns. They have some exciting stuff that I don't fully understand, which is why we hire amazing talent that can speak to it. But I will say on our side, as a company, Blackthorn's mission is that everybody kind of understands. We all do customer training. We all interact with people. It's not an I, me, my. It's always a we, us team mentality, which I love.
Hmm.
And we actually had a demo 2, 3 months ago,
Hmm.
and someone from our product team had explained the payments app. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we have a service company that comes to our house that I know uses Salesforce. Someone please call them. I'm so tired of having to call them to pay the bill over the phone. Then they say they don't accept American Express. And it was just amazing for me to be like so far removed from the actual product and have them explain it in just such a basic, easy to palatable way that I was like, hey, I have a referral. And I think that's what makes our team really special is it's very transparent. I very much can say comfortably like, hey, I don't understand this, and someone will show me. We also have the empowerment of our employees. Like if somebody gave me access to something, I'd be like, so I'm seeing code and I should definitely not touch that. So let's back me out of that before I break something. And it's not gonna be like, oh my gosh, you should just be in there. Or oh my gosh, how did you get in there? It's like, okay, thanks for raising the flag.
Okay, let's talk then about your field, right? So Blackthorn has team members in the U.S., the U.K., Australia, I guess, Argentina, and I guess a couple more countries, right?
We, as of right now, I believe we're in 13 countries.
13.
Um,
Okay. Wow.
it's the US, Canada, Argentina, Brazil, Honduras, the UK. I definitely can't name off, and not all are full time employees. Some are independent businesses. But even when we're looking for independent contractors, we don't scale it to just the US. We keep it open because the best talent is global. It's not
Hmm.
just in one zip code, one state, one country. So we've
Yes.
had a lot of really impressive talent come out of areas that are not US, even though we're a US based company. And it's been amazing just to see the collaboration. It's been amazing to learn about the other cultures. So we
Yeah.
very open to most countries. We are limited by some laws and things like that. But other than that, we're pretty open to hiring.
Okay. And I worked with a number of companies, like thousands of companies on their international journey, and I'm always curious about the unique path they take. So from my experience, the main motivations are usually money or local talent shortage, or yeah, you're a really global first company and you're looking for the best. So
Yeah.
what about your company? Could you share this story behind this global expansion?
I would love to take credit for that. That is our founder, Chris Fetterspill, who is also our CEO. I came on to Blackthorn and we were less than 30. And I want to say at least 25 to 35% of the workforce was outside the US. And he had some of our most tenured engagements, whether it's contractor or full-time employee, have actually been with Chris almost since the beginning. He's very much had the mindset like, hey, I think maybe it was the labor thing at the beginning, like a cost, the efficiency. Now, as we expand globally, it's one, finding the best talent. Two, our apps are worldwide and not everybody is throwing their events on US time zones. So being global has really helped that gap. We have a support team that we're expanding globally because, again, if something's not working, we as consumers, and it's not just Blackthorn, if I have an app that's not working or something that's not working, I want support right now. I don't I don't care where you're based. I'm based here in my bubble right now and I want answers. So, it's been really helpful for us to expand that way, and it's just been amazing to see the quality of employees that you would never have known.
And when it comes to scaling like worldwide, how does Blackthorn decide which countries to target for hiring? You mentioned that you're hiring in 13 countries, yeah? So do you have any specific strategy? Are there specific roles or skills you prioritize in different regions? Can you talk more about that?
I think the main thing right now is time zone coverage. I know the support team's a great example. Sales is a great example. We invested into our amazing Australian sales team presence simply because we had a product, we had a demand. It's really hard if you're East Coast or West Coast, you're meeting super late at night or super early in the morning. And again, you want to have that coverage and you want to have that personal connection. So normally we don't go into a role saying, hey, this is going to be based in California, or this is going to be based in Australia, or this is going to be based in Europe, unless it's like, hey, we have a support and we need time zone coverage for this. But we're still flexible in that. I believe I could be grasping here. I believe we have a support person who actually lives on the East Coast but prefers to work West Coast coverage. So they start a little later in their day and go a little more into the evening. And on the flip side, I'm a morning person. My biggest concern joining Blackthorn is they were predominantly East Coast in Europe at that point. I was like, what does that look like? There's been a few, hey, it's 5 a.m. I'm probably not going to attend that. But I usually start my day around 7 Pacific anyway, so their day hasn't gone too far off the rails. And then on the flip side, I enjoy the quieter afternoons to do heads down work. I can get a lot of data stuff done. I'm not getting bombarded with Slacks and stuff. So I know how to plan my day. And it's also great because we kind of support people traveling and working from anywhere for periods of time. I can work from the East Coast and be like, wow, the mornings are really quiet now. Or on the flip side, if I'm in a different time zone, it's helpful to have that flexibility. But we're also very, very open about like, hey, if this is when you're needed, this is when you're needed. But I don't think that a lot of that happens.
And let's talk a bit about a bit sensitive question, and I'm talking about compensation, right? So, navigating compensation in a global context this topic I talk with my clients all the time because this can be like quite a puzzle to solve. So, how does Blackthorn approach this? Do you align with local market standards, or is there some unique strategy that you have?
So this is still a work in progress. I don't think anyone has kind of the silver bullet answer. For us, we review the comp very frequently. I'm actually working on our 2024 planning, and we ran a study. I was using Remote and Oyster, both have great compensation calculators. And what we do is we try to average across an entire either nation or continent, depending. I know Oysters does like Europe as a whole. We have also introduced a compensation philosophy that our leadership helped craft that I am so, so, so grateful and in awe of. Having worked for bad bosses, I actually posted about it on LinkedIn recently where I was like, I had a boss be like, I just pay people as little as possible. And that's how I make my money. I don't ever want to be that company. So we really jumped into comp with a very transparent and frank conversation. And the first piece of that is compensation is not just here's $100 in whatever currency or whatever. Compensation is, do you have benefits? Is there work-life balance? Is there equity? Is there retirement? Is there a base salary? Is there a bonus structure? And every single person, you can line up 10 people at any company and one person's going to say, I want the highest base pay I can possibly get. Well, the next person's going to say, I need healthcare. I have a health condition of my own. I have a dependent that needs this healthcare. So we first sat down and explained, hey, we have these buckets. And I think we narrowed it down to like 4. We can't put everything in one bucket because then someone in this group of 100 plus people is going to feel slighted. So you may not get 100% of what you want, but we're working on giving everybody a percentage of what they want. The second piece is we review it. I pull the stats. I send our leadership a spreadsheet saying, hey, these people seem off market. These people seem below value. And then the last piece, which is really the piece for me that just makes me so proud to be at Blackthorn, is our statement. If you truly cannot pay your bills, cannot feed yourself, cannot feed your family, are in financial peril, the door is open. Come to us and we will work with you. We are not asking anybody to work for nothing and be struggling. If you come to me and say, hey, I'm trying to save up for this new Lamborghini, I need more money, that's not going to hold as much water with me. I'm going to support you on that. I have a very expensive wine collection that I try and support, but I don't see that as a life necessity. So at the same time, like it's got to be checks and balances. But I am so confident if anyone ever came to myself or our leaders and said, like, look, I can't feed my kids, I can't feed myself, we're going to sit down and say, why is our research not showing us this?
Yeah, and you mentioned Remote and Oyster. I also advise my clients to use this multiple, salary benchmarks from sources like Carta, Deal, Oyster. Yeah, we do not work with a Remote, but those 3, yeah, I strongly recommend. But this are not, always spot on. In fact, especially since many companies they're looking for talent with experience. Um, Talent who have experience basically working with US firms, and those firms often pay similar rates to what's offered in the US. So making that standard benchmark, I guess, less applicable. But anyway,
And
yeah.
I think something interesting we do that's important to note in the US, we benchmark off of, we use PAVE. That used to be separate from Option Impact. They've obviously merged now. We don't say like, oh, Bay Area, oh, New York. They have an option where you can average kind of the country. And I always use myself as the example. I live in the Bay Area. My data is going to say I should make this huge number. It doesn't factor in. We're a smaller company. I'm not working at the big Mangs of the world. So that data would be completely inaccurate. On the flip side, I choose to be in the Bay Area. My husband and I bought a house here. No one from Blackthorn was signing my name on that mortgage agreement. So there's got to be some personal onus in it. And we really try to emphasize, like, we want people to be happy, healthy, and financially secure with reason. Like, again, if I'm like, I'm trying to buy a mansion, my boss is probably not going to see that as like an immediate life need.
And again, you mentioned a Remote and Oyster, so I suppose you use them as a employer of record providers.
We just engaged with Oyster, and it's
You work with
been,
Oyster.
we are working with Oyster. We met them at HR Transform this spring. It's
Okay.
still a new relationship. I will say I have had the best team. They have been very responsive. We had some glitches. I tend to be fiercely protective of our people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this has to be fixed right now. I want all the answers. I want all the information. And they've been like, we got you. So that's been really helpful because we try to be very transparent. We expect a lot, but we'll also, if you ask us for stuff, we will get it to you quickly. But we will always take the interest of our people as number one.
And when we're talking about global hiring, do you use contract form or you hire full time using employer of
It
record?
depends. We have both set up in Oyster right now. So we have employer of records for full-time employees. We also have our contractors managed through there. And one of the things we enjoyed about Oyster is there is the option to add the added benefits. So if someone's like, hey, it's better for me to be a contractor, I have this setup, I've got my own business. We're not trying to mess with anybody if they've been a consultant for a long time. Converting them to full time can mess with taxes. And I am in no way a tax expert of every country in this world. So it's helpful to have a partner like Oyster. That being said, we can give a little more with Oyster through running our contractor management and our ERR through there than we could just doing it standard. And we use the PEO in the US as well. I know they call Oyster and Deal and remote international PEOs. It's not technically the same model. But in this US, we do the same thing. We're on a PEO called Sequoia One, and our team, they're a part of Blackthorn. We exchange gifts with them. We are very close with them. And I think having across the US and the globe, as a small people team, having those partnerships is really important because you can ask the questions. If somebody in Australia asks me a labor law question, I don't want to mess it up, first of all. And second of all, I want to make sure that my partner is someone I trust to give me the right info.
Yeah, I can cover that. That's true. That's true. And when we're talking about hiring in different countries, what strategy do you have? Do you work with local recruitment agencies, or do you prefer some, I don't know, like local job boards? Can you share some more about this?
I am a little bit removed from talent, but we do have a gentleman named Matt Roy that we work with, and he has a strategy. I know we utilize LinkedIn a lot. What we've kind of gotten into in the last year has really been internal referrals. We have a program that says, hey, if you know someone, so that has been huge for us. I know it's grown our South America presence pretty quickly because you get a great hire. And I think most are sourced through LinkedIn. There may be some local job board posting, but you get one, and it's the power of the good news. Is someone's like, hey, I love this here. And we're very clear, like, hey, if you're referring someone, you had to have worked with them. You need to know, like, the lens is also on you. And we've had really, really great referrals from that. Even with the like, hey, they check 8 of the 12 boxes, or maybe they're not as experienced as the posting says, but here's why I think they would be great. And sometimes it could be, they may not be great for that role, but let's stay in touch. I know our talent team stays in touch with people that they have that certain spark or energy, even if it's not a right now, because that has also been, okay, we'll come back. We just engaged with someone for a temporary contract basis because we couldn't fill the role. We decided to change our direction. He's engaging a few hours a week as a contractor. And it's great because if that role ever opens up, we have our first candidate to light into the pipeline. So for us, it's more of a relationship
Yeah,
approach.
makes sense.
LinkedIn is huge for us. I am huge on the employer brand. I think talking the good, the bad, and the ugly is really the step one in hiring, because I don't want anybody to ever come join the team and 30 days in and be like, all of this is not what I expected and I'm not understanding. And there's always going to be a piece of that. But I think having pretty transparent about who we are, how we work is important.
Yeah, that's true. And to those talent who are listening to us right now, maybe especially those who are based in Latam and Europe, and who might be dreaming of joining a place like Blackthorn, right? So, what are the top 3 pieces of advice would you give them?
One, always check our careers page. Number one, we keep our careers page as up to date as possible. LinkedIn, huge for us. I will give some free advice. I mistakenly posted that we were open some roles right before the weekend, I think 2 weeks ago. And over the weekend, I got like 200 connection requests, a bunch of DMs. So I had to circle back and be like, I just shared this to support the team. You don't talk to me till you get hired. I can't give you an advantage. Really, I would say the number one thing is just be yourself. If you apply and you don't have all the demanded expectancies or lists, tell us why you think you'd be great. That's going to be a more personable approach for us. We've had some great talent come through just engaging with us on LinkedIn. Even if it's not to Blackthorn, we all have pretty decent networks being in this field. I've had people comment, oh, I'd love to work at Blackthorn. I connected with someone last year. She was looking for a role. We didn't have anything. She found a role, but we had been messaging and we had been connected. She found this role. She asked me questions about like what she thought a prospective candidate. I was happy to give her a little bit of advice, and she landed in a great spot. So I think the biggest third piece of advice would be, don't put your eggs in one basket. Don't say it can only be Blackthorn, because you could connect with me and I may comment on something you've posted, a role you have open that's actually better than working for us. Obviously, I think we're the best, but there's a seat for everyone, and it just may not always be the table we imagined. And I would say I'm the best example of that. I moved to the Bay Area, instantly assumed I'm going to work at the big boys. I'm going to be at Google, I'm going to be at Facebook, I'm going to be at Apple. I've never worked at any of those. I know several people who have, and have had great experiences. I love startup. I love that I can name my whole team. The hardest day for me at Blackthorn was somebody was like, where's so-and-so located? And I had to look it up because we had gotten so big. Whereas before I was like, Europe, Australia, South Dakota, like I could name it off the top of my head. And I'm still pretty good, but it's one of those where it's like, oh no, I love like the closeness of our team. And even at 100 plus, we're still pretty close.
Maybe just to add one more thing there. When hiring globally, what kind of red flags pop up that talents should be aware of?
I would say in a lot of cases, if something sounds too good to be true, there's so many scams out there nowadays. It probably is. And I will say I very much questioned Matt Roy the first couple times we engaged. I was like, so it's 100% remote. We don't have these weird requirements. We have kind of a flexible working schedule. You don't care that I'm West Coast and most of you are East Coast. I was like, this seems scammy to me. Like, it didn't sound right. He very much had the right answers, gave me the information. I have, as a job seeker, seen things that I'm like, so if it sounds too good to be true, dig deeper, do your research, try and contact. And something that we've had candidates do that I did in my interview process, ask to talk to people who work there that are not on the interview panel. If it doesn't feel right, do your research, because as much as we as the company are interviewing you, you're interviewing us too. And we have people who Blackthorn doesn't work for them. We are not everybody's cup of tea. I have worked at companies that have been amazing companies where I'm like, this just isn't in my energy or vibe or whatever word you want to use. And I think talking about that and it being okay is kind of taboo to these days. But even with current employees, I'm like, if you're unhappy, I would rather you come to me and be like, I hate you. I hate the company. I hate what I'm doing. Because one, what if I can fix it? What if there's a role that's coming up where we can shift? Or is it better that we support you and say, hey, let me introduce you to connections. Let me see how I can help you. Because then you're still going to leave happy, as opposed to sitting here being miserable. And most good teams, talent teams and people teams, they're going to catch on when someone's not engaged. So it's all about be transparent and don't settle. There's so many people settling for jobs in this market right now that are just so unhappy. Yes, we all have bills to pay. Yes, there's an economic thing. If it truly doesn't sit with you from day one, ask why, ask if it's fixable, and sometimes say no.
Yeah. Blackthorn is known for really kind of valuing like work-life balance and being proud of your like workplace, right? So part of that is your 4-day work week thing, you know? So what inspired this move?
So this was our COO, who is one of my favorite people. He is incredibly smart, very just kind of to the point. He brought up that they were trying this in the UK. I very ignorantly, being in the US, said, well, that's cool. We're in the US. I don't know how that would work. And he looked me straight in my face and said, but people in the UK, why can't it work? So we did some research. We did a beta. It was a little bit bumpy at first. And I would say from a logistics size, it was bumpy. Like we were trying to figure out holiday schedules and coverage for the support team and stuff like that. But the number one thing that wasn't bumpy is we did an employee survey, and it was like everybody's like, this has been life-changing. I can go to the DMV. I can go to the doctor. I can clean my house and go to the grocery store when my kids are at school, so I get more time with them. And I was like, okay, so if we roll this back, our engagement's going to be tanked. But on the flip side, our leadership team took the approach of, we got all of the managers together and said, how do we make it work? What are the pain points? For us, holidays was a hard one. During our beta, the US President's Day holiday hit. So we had Monday and Friday off, which sounds amazing. It was pretty clear people worked that Friday. Like everybody's like, oh no, I'm not working. We have loosened up our, I would say, kind of forcefulness on it. If you need to do stuff on Friday, I do stuff on Fridays. I know other people do stuff on Fridays. I'm not scheduling a meeting with my team. I'm not engaging other teams. I'm doing heads down stuff because on the flip side, my dentist doesn't work on Fridays. He works Tuesday through Thursday. So I have to go during those times. So maybe I'm catching up on something on Friday, but on the flip side, I'm not disrupting anyone else's time off. So it's become a little bit looser on that. And the second part that we, I guess, are kind of controversial for is everybody's like, well, was there a pay reduction? We didn't reduce anyone's pay. And that was simply because we didn't reduce anybody's workload. It was the same amount of work in less amount of time. So when we were crafting it, the big challenge was, how do we keep people accountable? How do we ask people to complete these tasks? And what I always say when we're onboarding is, your manager will give you something they think can be done in this set time. It is then your ownership and your empowerment to say, hey, task A is actually taking 10 times longer because I hit a bug, I hit a snag. What does that look like? But if at the end of the week, you're like, oh, I didn't do any of them because this took longer, well, then it's kind of late to help. So we really emphasize communication support, raise the flag, be real. Don't take on 20 projects if you really own the bandwidth for 10, and be very transparent and passing back and forth, which is really helpful in people showing their time management skills. Because I think that's the number one thing for us is, can you manage time? Can you manage the tasks? We're not here to clock you in and out. We don't ask everybody to account for every second of the day, because we're all grown-ups. We all have our piece of the business we own and run. So that was really big. And then for us, holidays with all these countries, it's really hard. So we have defaulted to, there's 5 weeks a year where we ask everyone outside the US to work 5 days a week. President's Day being one of them, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, with the understanding, bank holiday wise, the US has the least. Most countries are a lot more generous. They build in a work-life balance. The US has not supported. So we've explained it like, hey, if we had to go through for each country and say, okay, well, India's got holidays these, so we're swapping the Monday for the Friday or whatever, it would be a huge admin lift. It would be actually a lot more work. So it's kind of like, hey, you're actually getting a lot of bonus weeks where you maybe have a holiday on Monday and still get Friday. We're okay with that if you understand these 5 weeks. And it was really hard to get that momentum rolling. But now people are understanding like, oh yeah, so the US really doesn't have a lot of holidays. And for weeks like Christmas, we don't shift it because it's quiet. Everybody's with families. Christmas and New Year's, we do give the whole company just like, hey, we're off. It'll be okay. I think there's some on-call coverage. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but I also know we ask people to do makeup days. So if you have to cover for a holiday, take the time elsewhere, because we do know you're a person outside of being a part of Blackthorn.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, in fact. So when I chat with my new clients, this holidays always come up. For those who are the first in this global hiring mode, it's almost like a wow moment for them when they hear about like a 20 plus national and must have regional holidays in Brazil, or this 4 week long vacation in Mexico that is kind of standard thing there. So that's yeah, your approach is very good, I guess. So
And I have to say, vendors are important. We actually just moved our HRIS to HiBob, and one of the biggest selling points to me was they have the national calendars loaded.
Okay.
So it just connects to our Google. So I can go in and be like, oh, Spain has a holiday today. Okay, great. I know not to message those people. So tech is super important. And also transparency. Every time the holiday calendars come out, I put a disclaimer. Hey, I'm a US citizen. I don't know all your holidays. If I'm missing something, come to me. I want to learn. I want to know. Every state has different holidays. We're going to work with you. We just don't know what we don't know.
And probably my last question. Could you share like maybe some 3 big lessons from your time at Blackthorn? Especially maybe you can share something for those companies who are thinking about going global. What should they keep in mind?
I think the number one thing is transparency. Nobody starts on day one being perfect at even being a single country employer. So when you have more than one or 10 or 20 or There's going to be bumps in the road. And I think it's okay to say, like, hey, this is a work in progress. If you could work with me, I'd love to learn about where you're located. I'd love to learn why things are, things like that. Being transparent has always helped serve Blackthorn's needs. Like, if we're struggling, if things aren't communicating well, just kind of saying, like, this isn't working. Why isn't it working? Let's talk about it. I think the second thing is be open-minded. I use the 4-day work week thing. It didn't cross my mind that 4-day work week was something that could work everywhere, because everything I had seen was the UK is doing this. The UK is doing this study. We're doing it now in a bunch of countries. And I'm really glad that I work for a leader that'll be like, hey, you're being really closed-minded right now, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Be open-minded. Maybe it won't work. We've had failures. Every good business has. But if we hadn't taken those risks, we wouldn't be reaping some of the rewards. And I think the last one is very much emphasize everybody is the same. We are big on equality. You are a member of the team. Our contractors, we don't exclude them from things. We just did our big holiday gift. I learned more about international shipping and customs than FedEx is hiring. My resume is polished. I would never do that again, but it was something I learned, and it was important because seeing the messages and the pictures across the globe is so heartwarming. But we're all the same team. Doesn't matter. We really don't have US team in this. It's in certain record keeping areas. We're all just Blackthorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're Blackthorn. And if you're going into this, I always use like the agency thing, which I'm sure you run into too, is like, oh, we want to hire in those countries and give them nothing. You're not a team. I want anyone at Blackthorn to think if they're in California, they're going to send me a message and we're going to grab dinner or we're going to meet for coffee, because it's not separation. It's just borders. Like, we would love for everybody to have that collaboration. And we do, we share pictures, people share different celebrations, and people can ask questions, which I love, because you're educating yourself because we're a team.
Ryan-Mae, huge thanks for sharing your insights today on your global first approach that you have in your company, your strategies in global hiring and compensation. Yeah, we appreciate your time very much.
I appreciate you having me, and I hope that everyone has a great holiday season, and I will definitely be listening.